All right, part 2. We're covering the documentary titled The Broken Boys of Kenosha, Jacob Blake, Kyle Rittenhouse, and the Lies We Still Live By. If you're looking for part 1, I'll put a link in the description below. But right now, we're going to start now looking at the fatherhood problem with those involved in the Kenosha shootings. Let's go. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dredd to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dredd Show.
Burn away the media-manufactured fiction about Jacob Blake. And what do you see? You see a bad man, but you ought to also see an abandoned boy. An abandoned boy who's just one tiny data point in a mass trend in this country. An unspoken catastrophe. The explosion in the number of boys who grow up without dads. This is Jacob Blake's father, Big Jake.
I got to go up and see my son today for the first time. He said, "Daddy, I don't know why they shot me so many times." I said, "Son, they shouldn't have shot you at all."
30 years ago, he briefly dated and impregnated Julia Jackson. By the time their son is born, Big Jake has already impregnated a different woman and moved 700 miles away to North Carolina.
Oh, Big Jake gets around.
Jacob Blake is part of the third of American boys that grows up without his dad. This is the highest rate in the world. There's an emerging science that the kind of basic, unglamorous rhythms of fatherhood are profoundly important for proper male development. Dads are especially important during adolescence. Primordial programming kicks in, flooding the boy's brain with testosterone, pushing him to take risks and seek adventure. And it naturally falls to fathers to train the boy's brain on how to channel that energy.
Ooh, call CPS. You see the way that Marcus Welby handled that young kid of his? Ooh, unnecessary force. He probably even spanks him.
All men are born into this ancient equation of human flourishing. And if that variable of father goes null, the chances that the boy's life will spin off into violent chaos jumps dramatically.
All the studies I've looked at over the years, going back 30 years when I was Attorney General the first time, showed that the thing that actually correlates most closely to whether a kid is going to go into a life of crime is whether or not they had a father who was involved in their lives.
That's because he's racist. No, I'm not kidding. That's what they're going to say.
I mean, it's just basic grandmother, grandfather wisdom says that you need two parents. And it's kind of remarkable hubris that we think that we can just get away with the single parent homes and think that there won't be any consequences.
Before he's out of high school, Jacob Blake is building a rap sheet. Gun charges, disorderly conduct, trespassing. When he's 14, he gets sent to live with his dad in North Carolina.
But the father can't have any effect on him because he wasn't there from the beginning.
Well, so Jacob Blake is there for a year, and then he insists on returning back to live with his mom.
Whereas with his mom, he can be Jacob Blake, essentially.
A father fails his son. He deprives him of paternal order, and he sets him on a course of lawlessness that will culminate in the violent viral encounter that now defines Jacob Blake's whole life.
Let's not let Jacob Blake off the hook here. He's the one that committed these crimes. He didn't have to.
And then after the shooting, the dad wants to stand up and say this.
My nature is to protect protect my son, to stand up for my son when he cannot stand up.
It's like, oh, so now you want to be a civil rights influencer.
Isn't that the case always? Where did we also hear that kind of thing? Oh yeah, Crystal Kaiser's mother. All of a sudden, she became Mom of the Year after Crystal shot and killed Randall Volar. In reality, she was much to blame for what took place.
It's like, man, where were you when it mattered?
Oh, by the way, Crystal Kaiser, I don't think had a father either. In fact, I know she didn't because it was her mother's boyfriend that caused a lot of turmoil in her life.
Yeah.
What gave them the right to attempted murder on my child?
Fatherless boys grow into unanchored men.
By the way, he asked a question. What gave them the right? Tennessee versus Garner. That's what gave them the right. Also, the laws of self-defense.
We missed that story once in Kenosha. And then 72 hours later, we missed it again. The 7 sacred tenets inspire thousands of protesters to descend on Kenosha. And the city is incinerated by a lie. On the third night of riots, 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse answers the call to come to Kenosha to protect a car dealership.
Now, that's not necessarily really true, okay? He didn't really answer the call. His friends did and asked him if he wanted to come along, and he naturally said yes. But it makes it sound as if he had read that little article from the Kenosha Guard requesting people to come and guard property. That didn't happen. Just setting the record straight. What they said here isn't really that wrong.
He brings an AR-15 in a medic bag, and he ends up killing 2 people. He's tried for murder.
Wait, was that an AR-15? I don't think it was. I think that looked more like an AK-47. I'd have to go back and look again. It kind of just scrolled by me fast.
And acquitted. And we're presented with only 2 options for understanding him. He's an agent of white supremacy.
Rittenhouse will be the poster child for reactionary white men.
Allegedly, he's part of a militia.
Arguably a domestic terrorist.
Running around, shooting and killing protesters.
Or he's the baby-faced symbol of gun rights.
Welcome to Kyle Rittenhouse Appreciation Day.
Kyle Rittenhouse is not guilty, my friend.
It's the fake news turkey shoot. Got a laser gun going pew, pew, pew.
I told you I didn't like the video when it came out, or the game, I should say. Didn't like it, not a bit.
Okay, next question. Does a good dad allow his adolescent son to strap on an AR-15 and wander into a war zone? So Kyle's father is Mike Rittenhouse, a perpetually unemployed alcoholic.
I want to answer that question. A lot of people have been asking that. This is a really common argument, that Kyle must be in the wrong because I would let my kid go to a protest with a rifle. That's really poor logic. If Kyle had defied his father's wishes, and they're going to talk about that here in a moment, that's between him and his father. It has no bearing on how we should feel about what happened and who's at fault. I mean, I might not want my kid joining the military. And if he does join the military and something bad happens to him, I can't say that he was in the wrong for joining the military. He just simply went against my wishes. But my wishes don't dictate right or wrong. I hope that got through.
Mike punches his wife in the stomach when Kyle's 4, and they divorce. So I found out Mike's only involvement in the nationally televised murder trial of his son is leaving late-night drunken messages on the office phone of Kyle's lawyer. At what will almost certainly be the most desperate moment of Kyle's entire life, Mike hides in the shadows. That's the kind of dad he is.
If you could please make sure to pull that microphone close and speak as loud as you can into it. Thank you.
Let's give him some credit, though. He didn't go out there and try to paint himself as Father of the Year, unlike all these others.
Could you state your name for the record and spell your last name?
Richie McGinnis. Richie McGinnis, RICHIEMCGINNISS.
I go up and I say, hey, is anyone willing to do an interview? And that was Kyle Rittenhouse sitting right there.
What brought you out here tonight? You just wanted to provide medical attention?
Provide medical attention to the people that need it if somebody's injured.
With Kyle, what I saw was almost a level of idealism and naivete that was at the point of stupidity.
There's only one member of the militia that is wandering around the streets and asking random violent rioters if they need medical attention.
Medical, EMS right here.
That's actually not true, or it's very misleading. Number one, he was walking around by himself, but simply because he got separated from the rest of the group. He was walking around with two other adult males, both of them ex-military. He was perfectly safe walking around with those dudes, but he got separated. And I have a video, by the way, that shows you the moment in which he did get separated. Ryan Balch and the other military dude, I forget his name, they went across the street to go to a convenience store, a gas station, and he didn't see it. And he was still on the other side of the street. And that from that point on, they couldn't find each other. It was a mistake, an accident. It shouldn't have happened. But whatever the case, Kyle just didn't go venture out on his own to go and help people. The other one is that he wasn't actively asking rioters if they needed medical attention. I don't think there was anybody there that was actively rioting that he asked if they needed medical attention. Now, that's a little bit of a hyperbolic statement.
Does anybody need medical? Does anybody need medical? Medical!
As he's saying, hey, I'm a medic, anyone need attention? I'm hearing people say, fuck you, or hey, what do you think you're in a movie, man? Huh?
Does anybody need medical?
To be honest, I don't think I heard anybody say that, but okay.
Yeah, but it's like, I feel as if I'm feeding into the narrative that he's bad. Right. And I don't believe that. I believe he's good. You need some law enforcement. You need some, like, these people were just destroying people's lives.
Yeah, you don't need to think that he's a bad guy. You just need to think he's a teenager.
That's a really good spot-on comment. He's a teenager. He has all of the weaknesses and recklessness of a typical teenager. He probably underestimated a little bit of the danger that night. Although, to be honest with you, that was mostly out of circumstance. Again, he's with older adults all night, and they're quite capable. Ryan Balch, for all everybody was talking about him, he's a big dude. He has military experience, and he's well armed. As Kyle was walking around with him, nothing was going to happen to Kyle. The fact that Kyle got separated from him could not have been foreseen.
Oh, looks like we got some people over here. Good, you guys keeping the peace? Yes, sir. You guys with the Kenosha guy?
And that's where you see the first interaction with me and Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah, I live in Kenosha. Oh, right on.
Notice he asked, are you guys keeping the peace? And they said, yes, sir. Doesn't sound like a bunch of boys out there looking to shoot people, does it?
I've covered over 150 protests. If you mind your own business, you stay by your property, the odds are no one's going to bother you. You don't want to look for trouble and stick your neck out there because they'll give it to you.
You're going to fall.
Yeah, and don't poke the bear. Try to be respectful. Don't get attention unless you have to.
All Kyle did was say, you're going to fall, because the person, I guess, was going to trip or something. So lighten up, Kristen. Give me a break.
You don't know who you...
Dads protect sons from the dangers of their own naivete. And Kyle's naivete is the only reason you know his name.
Yeah.
So he gets detached from his militia minder, and he makes a fatal miscalculation, which is to go on his own, alone and unguarded, to another used car lot.
Now, this is really a mistake, and this is one that they should not have made, okay? I've been fully supportive of this documentary for the most part. In fact, pretty much all of it up until now, but they made a mistake here. Kyle is seen here walking up to the police barricade to try to get to the other side so he could go home. The other side is actually perfectly safe. It's already secured. They're making it sound as if he's venturing out by himself on his own accord. However, the only reason why he did that was because they wouldn't let him get past the barrier. He had no choice but to turn around and go back in the other direction. And so to say that he would, that he actively chose to go out by himself is a pretty big misnomer on this part, especially when they're showing him here actually doing quite the opposite.
Right then, I see that same kid that I just interviewed running down the street with his AR, and in that exact moment, a figure came out of the dark part of the street, and that was Joseph Rosenbaum.
No mention of the fire extinguisher. He left that out completely. And yeah, Richie has not been a big fan of Kyle Rittenhouse. That actually works in Kyle's favor. I've said it many times. It makes Richie's testimony very believable and credible.
Joseph Rosenbaum is born in Waco, Texas, to unmarried parents. Early in his life, his dad is convicted of murder and dies in jail. Starting at age 10, Rosenbaum is regularly molested by his stepfather, who also forces him to watch him rape his brother.
I didn't know all those details. I knew a little bit of that. As you watch these documentaries, you learn more and more. Now, I would also want to verify that at some later time. But knowing Joseph Rosenbaum, that sounds about right.
So the person charged with setting some of the essential foundations of this young boy's personality is entirely absent. And into that void steps a violent, inescapable tyrant. This dude's brain got broken before he hit puberty. Near his 18th birthday, he pleads guilty to committing child abuse and spends 9 years in jail. One of his victims later goes to jail as an adult for also abusing a boy. This is some sick inheritance passed between generations of men.
Again, I didn't know all of this. Oh, I'd heard some of this, but I didn't know for sure. But if they have done their research, I'm going to have to trust them a little bit. And it really paints Joseph Rosenbaum as a really, really bad dude. Although they're making a good case that maybe it wasn't necessarily all of his fault, but ultimately it's certainly not Kyle Rittenhouse's fault.
So I got a copy of Rosenbaum's psychological evaluation from the Arizona penal system. And this psychologist, whose job is evaluating career criminals, calls Joseph Rosenbaum one of the most damaged individuals she's ever seen. So the morning of the rioting...
Yeah, between Kyle Rittenhouse and Joseph Rosenbaum, gee, I wonder which one was responsible for the aggression. That's a tough one for the left. They'll never be able to figure it out. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. They did figure it out. It was all Kyle's fault. Joseph Rosenbaum is the sweet victim.
He'd been discharged from a psych ward after a suicide attempt.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. He wasn't necessarily suicidal that night, but he didn't really care if somebody killed him. I still like to know who that dude is on the far left. That would be a great interview. But to my knowledge, he's never been identified.
He used his discharge bag from the psych hospital as a weapon against Rittenhouse.
And there's another mistake. Kyle opened fire on Rosenbaum because Rosenbaum caught up to him and tried to take his rifle from him, not because of the bag. Yeah, that was great. A little editing there would have helped, guys. I get it. It happens. Everybody's calling this an active shooter. Gee, I don't see him actively shooting anybody. Looks like he's trying to run to the police, who are right down the street. You see on the left there, those lights? That's where the police are. And everybody there knows it. They're trying to stop him from getting to the police. They're not trying to be heroes. Give me a break.
Anthony Huber. Anthony chases Kyle down and hits him with his skateboard, and Kyle shoots a single bullet clean through his chest cavity. Anthony was unwanted. He's born in Kenosha, and his dad tried to give him away.
Uh-oh! John Huber? The guy suing Kyle because Kyle took away his son? Hard to believe, huh? No, we've been saying it for a while. The person is a really bad dad. He's terrible.
As an infant. His dad, John, leaves Kenosha when Anthony's a baby and starts a new family in another state.
What a swell dad.
Fatherlessness renders Anthony kind of existentially destabilized in all the predictable ways. He racks up a 20-page rap sheet. He spends large portions of his youth in this jail on the outskirts of the city. He joins the 85% of incarcerated males that don't have dads. Anthony lives in this house in Kenosha, and he finds psychic relief and a makeshift family in the local skateboarding community.
Not a job, by the way. He didn't find relief in that. Because as far as I can tell, he never worked a day in his life.
I skated with them basically since I first moved here, which was back when I was in like 5th, 6th grade.
Why do you think he was there that night? Would you say he was like a particularly political person?
No. Most of his life was on the skateboard.
I can believe that. Why are they dragging him? I don't know. It's not like they're dragging him to safety like people are trying to shoot him.
I found out that John Huber, Anthony's dad, has launched a lawsuit against the city of Kenosha.
Yeah.
He's trying to collect a couple $1 million. And in that suit, he dares to describe Anthony as a beloved son.
I'm glad somebody is pointing this out. By the way, that lawsuit, I read it on my show, and I'll post a link to it in the description below. It is psychotic. I don't see how in the hell they're going to get anything out of it.
We lost our son, and there's no justice right now for our family, and there's no closure.
This dude who abandoned Anthony as an infant is now trying to profit off of his dead son's corpse.
There's big issues here at hand that people have been sweeping under the rug for years, like racism in the police in Kenosha. And
he's throwing that in there because the lawsuit also names all these other entities. He's after some money. It's not just Kyle he's going after. He's going after all the city governments and the police departments and everything.
And they've been sweeping it under the rug for years, and the people are tired of it. People are tired of this stuff.
A father fails his son. A father fails his son. A father fails his son. And a father fails his son. And we get this.
Again, I think that the big problem I have with this is that Kyle went out and he volunteered to go and protect some property. maybe he didn't envision all of the things that could happen to him tonight, but I don't see how his psychological makeup has been tarnished by his father not being there. I mean, if he had had a father, I think he still might have went out there to protect the property. I mean, he's a community volunteer. He loves to help his communities. Now, some of that could be because he doesn't have a father and he's looking for an identity. I get that. But here, it's almost like they're placing an equal share of the blame for what happened on him, which points to the fact that he doesn't have a father. Let's face it. Let's be clear. Jacob Blake, Anthony Huber, Joseph Rosenbaum are to blame for what happened, not Kyle Rittenhouse.
Abandoned and broken boys that grow into unanchored men. Do you see it now? Do you see the true catastrophe of Kenosha? Do you see the wretched kingdom sons will make when their dads disappear?
I like some of the graphics work here. So, there you have it. Let me know how you feel about it. Like my video and subscribe to my channel.